deep in the blue sparkling ocean, deeper than any human has ever gone, the Sea King lived with his subjects in a splendid palace made of rare seashells and pearls. He had 6 mermaid daughters, and the youngest was the most beautiful and thoughtful. She liked more than anything to hear of the world above the sea. When the Sea King's daughters turned 15, they got a special treat. They could swim up to the top of the water. But the littlest mermaid, being the youngest, had to wait and watch as all her older sisters went before her. When the older sister came back, she talked about sparkling stars. The second sister saw a beautiful sunset. The third, a garden full of flowers. The fourth described the vast sky. And the fifth marveled at giant icebergs. Despite these sights, all the sisters agreed that their underwater home was even more beautiful. One evening, a brightly lit ship sailed towards the Little Mermaid. On board, people were enjoying a fun party. The Little Mermaid swam close and looked inside a window, where she saw a happy prince celebrating his 16th birthday with his friends. Suddenly, a huge storm hit, making the waves grow tall and the wind howl. The ship started to break apart, and everyone fell into the sea. At first, the Little Mermaid was happy the prince was in the water with her. But then she realized people can't live underwater. I need to save him, thought the Little Mermaid. She dove deep and found the prince, still breathing. She brought him to the surface and floated with him all night. Then the storm cleared. They reached a calm beach. Near the beach was a white church on a hill. The Little Mermaid pulled the prince to the shore and softly kissed his forehead. Then the church bell rang and a group of young women ran out of the church door. The sound of their voices frightened the Little Mermaid, and she hid behind a rock. One of the young women ran onto the beach and up to the prince as he was opening his eyes. She was very beautiful, and the prince smiled at her. He did not know it was the Little Mermaid who had really saved him. The Little Mermaid sighed and swam under the waves back to her father's palace. But day and night, she thought of the handsome prince. The Little Mermaid began to spend all her time looking for the prince. One day, she found a beach with a big, pretty palace made of marble. She was so happy because she saw the prince walking near the water. This palace was where he lived. After that, the Little Mermaid came every day to secretly watch the prince. But she dared not show herself, because her grandmother had told her that humans were afraid of mermaids. They believed that everyone should have 2 of those props they call legs, her grandmother had said. And they think our tails are very ugly. Ah, if only I had legs, the Little Mermaid thought. Perhaps then I could make the prince love me. Then the Little Mermaid decided to do a terrible thing. The Little Mermaid went to seek advice from Sea Witch, who is very wicked and powerful. When the Little Mermaid entered her cave, the Sea Witch said, "I know why you have come, foolish princess.
I can turn your tail into legs so you can walk on land, but walking will hurt a lot, like stepping on sharp things. Once you turned into a human, you can't go back to living in the ocean with your family. And if the prince doesn't love you back and marry you, you'll disappear and become just foam on the sea."
"I'll do it," said the Little Mermaid, thinking only of seeing the prince.
"But I must be paid. In return for giving you legs, I must have your voice."
"But how will I make the prince love me without my voice?"
"You are very lovely. Use that to charm him."
"Very well," said the Little Mermaid, and she gave her voice to the Sea Witch, and in return the Sea Witch gave her the magic potion that would make her legs. She waited until night, then silently said goodbye to her family who were asleep. Then she swam to the beach by the prince's home and drank the potion the Sea Witch gave her. It hurt so much and she passed out. When she woke up, it was morning, and she was surprised to see the prince standing there. Looking down, she saw she now had 2 legs, and small pretty feet. "Who are you?" the prince asked. But the little mermaid could not answer. The prince took pity on her and led her to his palace. As the sea witch had warned, walking was as painful as stepping on sharp knives. Feeling sorry for her, the prince said, "You remind me of a girl I met once who saved my life when I almost drowned. She is the only woman I can ever love, but I shall never see her again." When she heard that, the little mermaid's heart almost broke. She wished she could tell the prince that it was she who had saved his life, but she could not say a word. One day, the king announced that the prince must marry the daughter of the neighboring king. So the next day, the king prepared a ship to travel to the nearby kingdom. The little mermaid accompanied the prince on the journey. When the ship reached the shore, the neighboring king and the princess were there to greet them. When the prince saw the princess, he cried, "She is the one who saved my life. All my wishes have come true." As soon as he was on land, he ran to the princess, leaving the little mermaid standing alone. The princess was very beautiful, and her eyes were kind and gentle. The little mermaid stared at her. "She is lovely and she seems good," the mermaid thought. "The prince loves her, for how can he know that it was I who saved his life and not she? So now I must prepare to die." The wedding of the prince and the princess was celebrated that very night. The prince asked the little mermaid to stand close to him during the wedding. "You must share in my happiness," he said. So the little mermaid held up the bride's veil and smiled, even though her heart was broken. "Tomorrow I must die," she thought. "I will never see my dear sisters or my father or grandmother again." And a tear rolled down her cheek. Late that night, the prince and his bride went to bed on the ship that was to carry them back to the prince's kingdom. Meanwhile, the little mermaid stood on the deck and gazed at the sea. Then she saw her sisters swimming toward her. Their beautiful long hair had all been cut off. The eldest one carried a sharp knife in her hand. They were all weeping as they called to the little mermaid.
"Dear sister, we gave our hair to the sea witch in exchange for this knife. Before the sun rises, you must kill the prince with it. Then your legs will disappear and your tail will grow. After that, you may come and live with us under the waves again."
The little mermaid took the knife and went inside the ship to the prince's room. He lay there asleep beside his bride. When she saw him, tears came to the little mermaid's eyes, and she ran to the deck and flung the knife into the sea. Then, as the sun was rising, she threw herself into the water. She waited to die and become like the foam on the waves, but instead she felt herself being lifted high into the air. "Where am I?" she cried. "You are with us, the spirits of the air," replied a host of musical voices. "Because of your good deed, little mermaid, you have been made one of us. You will not die. Instead, you will travel around the world spreading peace and kindness, and you will live with us forever." The little mermaid felt full of joy. Looking down, she saw the prince gazing sadly into the water as if he were looking for her. She flew down to him and whispered, "Do not be sad. All is well." As the prince's face grew peaceful again, the little mermaid joined hands with the other spirits of the air and rose into the clouds. The prince returned to his kingdom with his wife, and with the mermaid's blessing upon them, they lived happily ever after as the beloved rulers of the land.